It's time to get the retro crew back together and do another retrospective. We're going to DC Comics Green Lantern Volume 2, Issue number 9, the debut of the Yellow Lantern ring, as well as the first appearance of the Central Power Battery. And with me, as always, is the comic book retro crew. We got comic book editor, writer, Joe Corrala. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We've also got the voice of the voiceless, the man so cool they call him the Breen, the comic book hoarder himself, Eric Breen. How you doing?
Fantastic.
What was your first introduction to the Green Lantern? Were you sucked in immediately, or did it take you a while to get used to the idea of a man with a power ring making constructs policing the galaxy?
The first Green Lantern I remember buying new was when they relaunched it in '76 with issue 90. I had been reading Justice League for a few months before that, and he was a member of that group. So I remember liking it from the beginning because, you know, my first exposure to it was he was still teaming up with Green Arrow. And I thought, this is pretty cool. Yeah, they're friends. They bicker a little bit back and forth, but they come together to get the job done. So I thought it was a fairly interesting character.
This is a great appearance here. So let's get right into Green Lantern number 9, Battle of the Power Rings. As we open up, Hal Jordan is having some problems with his ring. Every time he's using it, it's kind of getting interrupted and it's losing power. He ends up he doesn't crash land, but he loses power to the power to flight as he's going to intercept. I believe they're called the Packers, a gang of ruffians that are going and stealing things off of trains. Thought that was a great day, by the way. But I love this moment. The Packers see him, they just start shooting bullets. So he makes a Green Lantern shield. When he's done, he just makes an enormous green hand and hits him on the top of the head.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely love this whole bit, and it's so moody. And we've praised Gil Kane in the past, but his style here is very different than when we would talk about him in Spider-Man issues later on. He really nails like mood and tone and just the way he tackles just like that kinetic movement. Like it feels like people are moving like it, at the top of that second page that Hal's like flying, and just the way has, the legs tilted up a little bit. Like it really feels like he puts that kind of care into these books.
And he goes back. Apparently he's got a really important meeting, and he stresses how important this meeting is. We end up finding out he's meeting up with the other Green Lantern Corps. They're having a meeting, not with the Guardians, so it's on another planet, and he needs to charge up his ring because he doesn't want it to run out, and he's been having problems with it. His ring gets stuck to his power battery, and next thing you know, Sinestro's there. He's not supposed to be anywhere. He's supposed to be, on an antimatter universe in prison. It turns out he created his own ring of yellow power, and he's been siphoning off the power from the Green Lantern ring to charge his, and that's why Hal Jordan's ring keeps getting screwed up.
And we come to find that Sinestro is a hard man to keep caged. It only took him 2 issues to escape the first time, and with this new ring he's created, he's able to overcome Hal.
And he even throws him in a cage, and he says, because you're a Green Lantern, you'll never be able to escape this cage.
Yes,
which is important.
Words matter, as we find out a few pages later.
He decides to use the power of his yellow ring, and he uses it to make himself look like Hal Jordan. He goes to the planet where they're having this meeting, Joe, and he needs to get to the Guardians of Oa, so he needs to distract these people and keep them there, the rest of the Green Lantern Corps. So he uses the ring to basically create a big monster that's not really there. They're all trying to shoot it down with their rings, and he's just sucking off power from it so he can go destroy the Guardians of Oa. Then he covers the entire planet in a yellow cloud, I guess, before he heads off to Oa.
Like Sinestro, for like the second time we're seeing this character, is like real hot out the gate. He's just like, I defeated Hal like really quickly. I'm gonna go defeat all the lanterns. Like so this was really like a step up in terms of just threat level.
And he definitely has a unique look. He looks a lot different than what we know today. His skin's a little bit darker, but he still has that kind of elongated head. And they do refer to him as like the face of evil, like the satanic this and that. So they definitely want you to know that this is a very powerful, formidable villain.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they sell it. I really think this like first half of this story, they really sell just how powerful he is. Because, you really don't see it that often where, he just uses his ring and like Hal's like done pretty quick.
I did like the moment where he falls on the ground face first. He's trying to talk to himself to keep himself motivated, and he's out.
Yeah.
That was a great scene by Gil Kane. So you mentioned earlier, Breen, that words matter. Hal Jordan is stuck in this cage, I guess, of yellow energy, and he can't get out. And he's got this mental block. Apparently, Sinestro has planted something in his mind that is keeping him from overcoming this obstacle. And he realizes, if I take off my clothes and get naked, I won't be a Green Lantern anymore, and I can pass through the bars. And that's what he does.
That's right, because he said Green Lantern, no matter what Green Lantern does, he can't escape. But he didn't say anything about Hal Jordan. Most superheroes peel off their civilian identity and their costume is underneath. Apparently, Hal is the reverse. He peels off his Green Lantern uniform and his street clothes are still on. So does he go street clothes, Lantern uniform, another set of street clothes for just this kind of emergency? Because you never know who's going to be watching. And you don't want to expose yourself on some, strange planet. But it works. Down to his skivvies. He's able to escape the cage, recharge the ring, and then that's going to be bad news for the skinny red-faced guy coming up soon.
So they go to Oa where the Guardians are, and Sinestro's blasting through some force fields type of things. And then next thing you know, Hal Jordan shows up. He's like, listen, Buster, you thought you could contain me? I'm more than a Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Then they have a will-off with the ring powers, and it looks like Sinestro's going to overcome him, but Hal Jordan is the greatest Lantern of all time for a reason, Joe, and he's able to dig down deep within himself and exert the power of the ring and overcome his will with his own power ring and ends up victorious.
Yeah, and it's a really cool way he does it, because he, just his force of will and using his power, he shatters Sinestro's ring. That's a great visual.
Yeah, he even says, he's like, if I overcome his ring with so much power out of mine, it's going to destroy itself, and that's exactly what he does. I guess we kind of miss this. We should definitely talk about Gil Kane a little bit more here. We get to meet some very interesting, weird Green Lanterns as they're about to embark on this meeting. One of them's an insect Green Lantern. One of them's, I guess, some type of crystal life form. One of them, I don't even know what it was. It was something. Apparently, it was organic, and it's living in a member of the Green Lantern Corps. There's also a fish type of Green Lantern. You could tell Gil Kane was having some fun here, throwing in, his imagination. What are people going to respond to? What's the weirdest thing I can put onto a page and still fit a Green Lantern logo on?
And some of these lanterns, show up for decades to come, with designs changed only very slightly.
Yeah, I always love to see these kind of sci-fi inspirations and what they came up with during this time of our culture, Eric Bree. They're always really fun.
Well, if you, at this same time, one of the stronger sets of books in DC was things like Tales of the Unexpected, Strange Adventures, where characters that looked like that were commonplace. Just take off the Green Lantern uniform, because they were very big on, like I said, sci-fi, bug-eyed monsters, different this. And so, which I'm sure he had some experience drawing and backup stories in some of these other books at some point.
So as we get into here, Bree, we see all the other Lanterns eventually show up, and we see the introduction of the central power battery as the Guardians of Oa, I guess, say, hey, listen, you guys need to charge up so you can go back to where you came from, because none of them charged up. They went directly from their meeting right into battle, and they perhaps weren't going to be able to make it back to their original sectors. And this is a pretty big concept. This is kind of a big moment, not just within Green Lantern, but DC Comics lore, kind of still plays a central role within Green Lantern. That was the big premise behind the last story from Jeff Thorne, was that it was destroyed again.
No, it's interesting to see. And again, the design of it has been kept through the years as well.
So we get to the very final pages of this, Braden, and you would think that the Guardians of Oa, the Green Lantern Corps, would have learned their lesson, but they've decided that they're going to encase Sinestro once again in green power energy and send him off on an orbit around the universe that's going to take him 18 million years to complete. So there's no way he will ever return, correct?
If I make a slight correction, it's 18 billion years, or 2 issues, as he shows up in issue 11.
He sure does.
So time moves fast in the Lanternverse.
Although if you were a kid waiting for this comic, it might have felt like 18 billion years.
Or 11 billion.
Yeah.
And then you had to hope that your friendly neighborhood newsstand guy got it.
Yes.
This is a lot of fun. I love the Green Lantern Corps. Personally, Hal Jordan's one of my favorite characters. He would, let's be honest, he would kick Guy Gardner's ass 7 ways from Sunday, but that's neither here nor there, Breed. Glad we got to do this one. John Broome, I think this is the first issue of his that we've talked about on the retrospective. We've certainly done a lot of Gil Kane's work, but this actually felt a little bit ahead of its time there, Breed. It wasn't so much just for kids on this one.
No, I mean, it had the familiar tropes of a DC comic at the time. I said Sinestro was maybe not quite as silly looking as some of the other villains that were popping up in Flash's Rogues Gallery, but he was still, I mean, DC antagonists had a look, and he definitely fit. He could have fit in any number of those Strange Adventures or Tales of the Unexpected Stories that I was talking about before. Since DC was structured in the 2-part stories, sometimes they would get to the end and be like in a wrestling match where they've been going back and forth for 40 minutes, and then someone holds up the signal, wrap it up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it gave the illusion that he beat him fairly easily the second time around. But I think that had just more to do with the fact that they were restricted by a number of pages, so they had to, it looked easier maybe than it was.
As we mentioned, this particular story is key to the future of DC Comics and Green Lantern. From Green Lantern number 9, you can get this in a lot of reprints. This is absolutely everywhere because it is so important. Green Lantern Archives Volume 2 has a reprint of this. Green Lantern Annual number 1. The Green Lantern Chronicles Volume 2 Showcase presents Green Lantern Volume 1. The Green Lantern Omnibus and Green Lantern 80 Years of Emerald Night Deluxe Edition will only have this story. It won't have the backup story that's also in there. Is there any other places to get a reprint of this, or will that just about cover it?
I think that covers most of it because a lot of that's also in print. The Chronicles I know are in print. The soft covers. You could still get the omnibus, discounted on places. So yeah, it's pretty easy to get a hold of. Also, I know we're not getting into the story, but the latter story does feel more like a typical sort of DC comic at the time. Like it's very, it's character Sue Williams trying to figure out who Green Lantern is. It's a fun, silly story where she thinks, Hal's brother is the Green Lantern and he has 3 brothers and it's basically the Kennedys, but like there's just a lot of like silliness to it.
And she even says one of her ways to prove the Jordan that she thinks is Green Lantern, she goes, I'm going to take this idea that I stole from Lois Lane, and throws herself off a tall building.
Yes.
Nothing's going to happen to me because he's Green Lantern. He's going to save me. Well, you better hope you're right.
It's a great little story. So if you do get it, in a reprint that also has it, give that a read too, because it's a cute little story.
So, Joe, you are apparently fond of the color green because we're going to Marvel next week and we're going to do Incredible Hulk 171.
Yeah, it's going to be fighting Abomination and Rhino, who are getting their revenge for their previous defeats in the Incredible Hulk 158 and 159.
Well, that sounds lovely. Are you on board for this one, Breen?
Yes, and I also want to point out, for anybody that rolled their eyes at the mention of Rhino, this was before he became the default villain for anybody that needed a big dope to get one-punched by whatever character was getting elevated in that particular month. This is a Rhino with some clout.
If you can't get enough comic book retrospective, last week we talked about Silver Surfer #1, one of the very few, if not the only, collaboration between John Byrne and Stan Lee. If you didn't get a chance to check this one out, it's a fantastic comic book. You're going to love this. Definitely check out the entire playlist on the channel.